It's established wisdom that in order to have fun, you need to pay the piper. There's even old sayings that warn you about stuff like this, like, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Well, I'm here to tell you that not only is there a free lunch, but an entire endlessly refilling buffet. You just need to know where to look. So without further preamble on my part, here's some of the greatest games from yesteryear that cost nothing, and give almost infinite amounts of fun in return. Free Doom. The source code to the Doom engine is free and open thanks to the generous nature of id Software back in the day. The sound and graphics and levels are still proprietary, which means you need to own a copy of the game in order to use them. So that means you'll have to pay money in order to obtain it legally, disqualifying it from this list. Free Doom is the open source alternative to this. Released back in 2003 and still developed to this day, it provides a set of free graphics, sounds, and level replacements that source ports can use to run the game. Couple that with GZ Doom and you can now access almost every community map in Doom's almost 30-year history. An infinite amount of content to blast through. OpenTTD. In 2004, programming genius Ludwig Strigius released OpenTTD, an open source engine replacement for the best business management sim of all time, Transport Tycoon Deluxe. This provided all kinds of nifty enhancements, but you still needed a copy of the original game in order to run it. By 2009, this was no longer an issue, as the community had developed their own graphics and sound for the new engine to read, free of charge. This soon became enabled by default, so that OpenTTD went from being an open source expansion of Transport Tycoon to its own project outright. With randomly generated maps, customizable industries, vehicles, and even AI, this extension of Chris Sawyer's original vision remains the definitive game in the genre, and is infinitely replayable as a result of this procedural generation. Freesive. Remember those early Sid Meier games? The ones with pixel art or Elvis as one of your advisors? Remember how frustrated you got when the series moved away from that? Annoyed that you now have to run DOSBox or try and get the XP Gold version of Civ 2 working? Well, Freesive is the answer to your problems. Sure, nothing can replace the feel of those early turn-based games, but if you were more interested in the gameplay without the trimmings, then Freesive is the answer. Released on a new general public license, anyone can play this game for free, and enjoy that classic strategy against increasingly difficult opponents for the rest of time. Ancient Domains of Mystery. Don't let the price tag on Steam or GOG fool you. ADOM has been free since the early 90s, and is one of the longest maintained roguelikes in gaming history. It's a gloriously old-school experience that every RPG fan should suffer through at least once. With procedurally generated lands and dungeons, no single playthrough of ADOM is ever the same, and trust me, it will take you more than one attempt to save Ancardia from the spread of chaos. Nethack. Even older than ADOM, Nethack came out of the 80s, the same decade that established the roguelike and roguelite genres in the first place. But instead of exploration in an overworld, Nethack throws you into a dungeon with 50 odd levels and an animal companion to grow and learn alongside you. Death is permanent. Traps and puzzles are plentiful, and you'll need your head on a swivel to survive the deeper depths of the dungeon delving, with procedural generation again allowing for a ridiculous number of possibilities so that you never get bored. The Dark Mod. Remember the Thief games, where you would sneak about silently through vast manors or strange dungeons in search of treasure or items before having to carefully plan your exit strategy? Well, it turns out that you're not the only person who remembers the Thief games. The Dark Mod was originally a Doom 3 modification with emphasis on stealth, but these days it runs on the open source id Tech 4 engine as a standalone release. You brush up on your skills courtesy of a tutorial and some easy opening levels. Then you can download additional levels using the in-game menu system for hundreds of hours of sneaking about. Starcraft. Blizzard made Starcraft completely free in 2017. And in my opinion, it's still the best real-time strategy game ever made over 20 years after its initial release. Play as 3 unique races across a huge campaign that entangles each of them with its story-rich narrative. Then once you're done with that, you have an endless number of skirmishes and multiplayer matches to give yourself that sweet RTS fix. Sure, if you want to do it the convenient way, you'll have to subject yourself to a Blizzard app, But the more industrious among you will be able to play the original, safe in the knowledge that you're no longer breaking any laws. Dwarf Fortress. Imagine combining the complexities of a city builder or dungeon sim and marrying them with the roguelike elements and permadeath, and you're only beginning to scratch the surface of Dwarf Fortress. An enormous open-ended strategy game that's different every time. All you have to do is build and improve your fledgling colony and prevent it from being destroyed, which in most cases it inevitably will be. Released much later than the graphics would suggest, this strange ASCII game from 2006 has had a bigger influence on the gaming landscape than any other in the 15 years since, because it resulted in some Swedish man making an easier and simplified version of the game and calling it Minecraft. Daggerfall. Since 2009, Daggerfall has been available to download for free. Coincidentally, since 2015, there's been a way to play this wonderful open-world RPG in the Unity engine. Fast forward to the 20s, and you have a rock-solid dungeon-crawling experience in a game world that's incalculably vast. You can pursue the main quest with gusto in your attempts to get to the bottom of things, or completely ignore matters beyond your initial meetings and instead strike out into the world as your own person. Whatever you decide, this classic Bethesda RPG has hundreds, if not thousands of hours of gameplay for you to delve into. Micropolis. In 2008, the source code for one of the first and greatest city building games of all time, SimCity, was released for the one laptop per child program. The catch? You can't call it SimCity because that's EA's trademark, so instead it goes by the original working title, which is catchy enough anyway. Micropolis cannot be won or lost. You build up a city and have a great time in the process, choosing on a whim whether to tend to it with all the love and care of a freshly pruned bonsai plant, or destroying it with savage and reckless abandon. As a result, the game only ends when you've finally tired of it, and that could take thousands of hours, or even a lifetime. Pioneer. When we talk about the size of game worlds, space sims are often ignored. This is because they simulate entire galaxies, and Pioneer is no exception. This open-ended space sim is heavily inspired by DOS classic Frontier Elite 2, and space is whatever you make it to be. The game is endless and entirely open. You can be a taxi driver, a trader, a smuggler, a pirate, or even a bounty hunter, for as long as you please, or simply drift through space using Newtonian physics and marvel at the planetary backdrops. There are millions of star systems and infinite possibilities, just like all the other games I've listed, where the only limitation is your own enjoyment.